Hi. As you can see me now. I have a very makeshift studio setup that I'm going to use from now on, and I do that for two reasons. First, it feels more personal, even to me, even as I sort of stare into the camera to talk to you this way. And the other reason is, frankly, that post-production is tedious the way I've done it in the first few videos, making the presentations, getting them to add some value, and just really making all these individual slides. It was annoying, and I didn't want to do just 3 slides per video like I do in the quick ones. Um, I guess the journey of making better videos is beginning on the visual side of things as well. Okay, today I want to talk to you about one of the many ways that we can react to an opinion that we don't like and that we're confronted with. There are many, like I said, that's trivially true. Um, one of those ways that we can react to them is questioning someone's motives. Usually, that means pointing out some interest that the other person might have that isn't in truth, that isn't in getting the best possible progress on the debate, some material interest, whatever it might be. For example, if someone argues that all um, computer operating systems, but Windows should be banned, someone in the comments, whether it's an actual comment section or something more traditional, will point out that person's connection to Microsoft, whether that connection exists or not. So by that we can sort of tell questioning someone's motives is a pretty common move, and that's why it's worth talking about it, I think. And that move, questioning someone's motives, isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes people do have interests outside of truth that need pointing out, which is why scientific and scholarly magazines often have a disclosure requirement where contributors, authors are required to raise their hand on any conflicts of interest that they might have. Questioning someone's motives, though, has an interesting structural trait. It does an interesting thing in the rhetorical game, and that is, it bypasses substance. What do I mean by that? For better or for worse, when you question someone's motives, you're shifting the topic. The topic of discussion is no longer about whatever they said, it's about why they said it, about the motives that they might have had, other than that they think it's true and they want to contribute, to say that. And we are no longer talking about the validity of their arguments, the merits that their position might have. And again, shifting the topic that way may be valid. What I'm doing here is a formal analysis. The merits of questioning someone's motives can at the end only be judged sort of on a case-by-case basis. All I'm arguing for is a certain kind of caution around assuming bad faith, around questioning motives. And the case for that caution I hope to make in this video. A widespread rule, more of a aspirational commandment sometimes, for any debate is to assume good faith on the other side's part. In some contexts, that can go to kind of ridiculous lengths. For instance, in the British parliamentary system, you're not allowed to accuse someone else of lying. The most you can say there is they may be inadvertently misleading the House. German parliamentarians can go a little further. They can say they are deliberately making untrue statements. And the awkwardness of those phrasings uh, sort of cause us to ask, why go to such lengths? Why be so coy about the question of good faith? Superficially, we might think that it's just the case because it's sort of mean or rude to act like the other side is doing something bad, is acting in bad faith. And I don't think that's even wrong. That's certainly part of it. It's just conventionally rude to talk like that about someone else. On a second level of analysis, we see that assuming bad faith on the other side's part and saying so heats things up, often unnecessarily. If someone accused you of lying, how motivated would you be to fairly debate anyone? Um, Nobody likes to be called a trickster or a liar, and that's why the rules impose restraint on the participants of a debate, and that is, I think, that's the functional analysis of it. But I think there is a third level on which we can analyze this prohibition on expressions of assumption of bad faith. And this third level offers something that is neither moral or conventional nor emotional. On this level, assuming bad faith is a structural problem, and assuming good faith is necessary on a structural level. If we, like I said before, understand questioning someone's motives as shifting the topic, then allowing debate participants to question motives means a constant potential for chaos, for a collapse of the debate. The discussion could easily devolve into sort of tedious debate about people's character that really leads nowhere, because whoever is going to step forward and say I'm a bad person, that's not how that works, and so the whole exercise is sort of pointless, especially if we're talking about like a parliamentary or decision body that needs to come to a conclusion. In that kind of devolved debate, sort of mutual accusations of this, that, and everything will dominate the scene, and work will just not get done. And that's why structurally it's necessary to not really to assume good faith on the other part, but you have to pretend you do. The pretense is part of making the whole operation work. Of course, even in such circumstances, accusations of bad faith still happen. But the ban on certain expressions of assumption of bad faith, in this case, the example I chose was accusing someone of lying, serves the function of making the instances of a debate going off track less frequent, of making it less likely that a debate will collapse in the way I've described. It's discursive harm reduction. So I'm pretty sure some of you are already asking yourself a specific question. What about cases where an actor in a debate is not interested in good faith, is actually acting in bad faith? And in that case, the prohibition of calling them out on that might actually be detrimental to the debate. And I agree. A rule like the prohibition against expressions of an accusation of bad faith makes the forum where the debate takes place vulnerable to a certain kind of exploitation. If you, as a bad faith actor, sort of skirt the other rules on good faith debate in a very deliberate way, you can unlock possibilities which good faith actors do not have. You can enact a sort of discursive violence. You can get your position, the things that you want to say, an unfair advantage. Systems of discussion and fora of debate attempt to mitigate this problem by having more rules than just this one. At the end of the day, though, they all run into a problem. And that problem is that all rule systems, be it a board game or a debate forum, need that assumption of good faith, need an actuality of good faith. People do need to want to move within the spirit of the rules. As soon as people see the rules as something to exploit, then that exploitation will happen, and that means that there will have to be more rules and more specific rules, and then we have got the whole lawyering game going on. For some rule systems, like those governing very concrete physical objects, how we deal with them, the problem of making the rule systems workable is complicated enough. And the history of law sort of tells that whole tale. For a debate context, I think the problem is extra tricky. And it's extra tricky because for a debate to do what it's intended to do, participants have to have a wide latitude to talk. If they're too regimented, the debate will just no longer be a debate, will no longer serve its purpose. It's hard, and sometimes, and at a certain intensity of regulation, impossible to regulate a debate without stifling it. That doesn't mean that debate does not need any rules. Doesn't mean that any debate that has rules is already broken. The opposite is true. It needs rules rules for some value of that word. What I mean to say is the debate context requires a particularly high degree of actual good faith. The function of debate can fray at the edges, start to fall apart when the assumption of good faith becomes a formality rather than a reality. We can forget about the substance if all we're thinking about is how wicked our opponents are. That is a problem that would be manageable if there were no bad faith actors in the debate. But given the incentive that I've outlined for a certain degree of bad faith, of trickery, of lying, we're almost certain to be faced in debates with some attempts at exploitation, some bug using in gaming terms, and temporary bad faith participants. Overall, I think this problem can only be handled not through rules, but through an ethos. And that's why I said before that we need rules for a value of rules, for a certain meaning of what a rule is. I think we need this kind of shared understanding how debate should work and the commitment of the participants to go that way, to act inside that shared understanding. Think of it like a sort of honor code of the participants. And the degree to which that honor code is upheld will determine the upper limit of how productive the debate might be. On the other hand, we will never be able to do completely without being able to question the motives, question the good faith of other participants. If we are overly free with that, if we question other people's motives all the time, no decent debate is possible, as we discussed. If, however, we're never able or willing to break the prohibition to question other people's good faith, we are making us entirely defenseless against a shrewd bad faith participant who may be able to bend the rules enough to get a great advantage, especially in less formalized settings, while not being so transgressive that they're cast out. And I think the examples for that are manifold. Some of you will have noticed a parallel there to what I said about violence in an earlier video. Using force is problematic in, I think, a similar way that it is problematic to question people's motives. Both, however, I think cannot be discarded as a means for all times and all situations. To do that, to discard them, to say we will never do this, is to sacrifice the way we want to live and the way we want to have debates to an over-adherence to principles which aren't commandments from God. These are not things that are valuable in and of themselves. The commitment to rules like not questioning other people's motives, not using force, are practical more than they are ideological. They serve certain purposes, and when they would not serve these purposes, we should be able to momentarily suspend them as ideals. For the last part of the video, I want to pursue in some more detail how the inept application of the tool that is questioning another's motives can destroy the discourse. We see it all the time, I think. Issues and discursive contexts which are so charged that not even a genuinely good faith actor can make any headway in them. Now, this is a very complex phenomenon, and I can't even start to discuss it exhaustively here, but I do think that I can say a few useful things about it. Like I mentioned before, someone whose motives are being questioned will be offended, whether they are justified in being offended or not. Their reaction will shift the discussion to matters of character, of sort of goodness or badness. Discussing the goodness or badness of our personalities is obviously very emotional, very hurtful, and tempers about to flare. And when tempers flare, truth becomes sort of uninteresting, and it's hard to stay with the subject of the debate. We will tend in those situations to take sides and no longer take positions, material positions. We will tend to see the debate no longer as an exercise in problem solving, but as a form of combat. Ultimately, we can have word fights, but we cannot expect word fights to have productive outcomes in the sense that debate can have productive outcomes. And that is because in a devolved debate that is becoming a word fight, we're no longer talking to the other participants in the debate. We are talking to third parties. We're trying to expose the stupidity or wickedness of the other side. And I hope for the last time in this video, this isn't always a bad thing. People, for instance, should not be expected to civilly debate whether they should exist or not. or whether they should have basic human rights. That's stupid. Nobody could fairly expect that to be a debate. And like I said before, there are bad faith actors. They are those we cannot debate. We can only fight them. And in a fighting situation, it's no longer about truth, obviously, almost per definition. It's about winning, or at least of surviving it. Therefore, things in a debate can devolve to a point where whatever else may be true, what we're doing is no longer a debate. It's a contest in some kind of point scoring. Truth will not be found in that kind of discussion. But ultimately, we want truth to be found and the good opinions to win out over the bad ones. That's why we're unhappy with the discourses that don't seem like we can even reach the other side, let alone get them to understand why we think the way we do. The challenge we face to not let a given discourse go bad when it could be good is twofold. We have to restrain our instinct to question others' motives without really solid evidence, just because they have a different opinion than us. We should never start discourse by questioning motives. It's sort of a means of last resort. At the same time, we have to be ready to take that step, to question their motives, to conclude that a person or a position is beyond the pale, that they're no longer going to be part of the discussion. And if we're unable to do that, we will poison discourse itself by allowing bad faith actors to leech off our good faith. That's a great challenge to get that right, and the stakes are very high. When we get it wrong, we risk making debate on important topics difficult or even impossible, which ultimately means that a status quo, which may be undesirable, is stabilized. To enable us to get it right, to face that challenge the right way, it's, I think, important to have more private, peaceful spaces with people who are like-minded, where we can get second and third opinions, which we can take to be genuine and good faith. I think without a certain bubble quality, these spaces will not fulfill their function, while acknowledging that that too has its risks, the risk of echo chambers. Ultimately, my bottom line is this: none of the skill that we need to move in and maintain good discourse will be a trade we can learn once and then practice forever. We should try our best. We should expect mistakes, including our own mistakes, and be ready to reverse them. The bar is very, very high, but the attempt to jump it is, I think, worth it. And with that, we're at the end of the video. That's all for today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.